Hi students, my name is Hans, a teacher of mathematics at Mofleris Secondary School. So please welcome to our maths class today. And if you can, please make sure you have your pen and maybe something to write on, piece of paper, but preferably an exercise book. So our topic of today is coordinate geometry. So first and foremost, very important that you know the objectives. By that I mean, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to plot and read the coordinates on a Cartesian plane. We shall discuss so that you understand what a Cartesian plane is. Should be able to calculate the gradients of a straight line given 2 points or from an equation. We shall also look at that. Then you should also be able to interpret and obtain equation of a straight line in the form of y equals to mx plus c. We shall look at this also. Then you should be able to describe a straight line parallel to a given line. Then we are also going to look at how to find the gradient of perpendicular lines and their equations. Then also how to find the midpoint of a line segment given the coordinates of the endpoints. And lastly, we are going to look at how to calculate the length of a line segment. So we shall start by looking at the first objective. When I talk of Cartesian plane, this is what I talk about. So we have the x-axis and the y-axis. So this is Cartesian plane in 2 dimensions. So normally it is divided into 4 components. We call them quadrants. So this is the first quadrant. Quad means 4. And this is the second quadrant. Then we have third quadrant and the fourth quadrant. So another important thing that you need to know, both the axes meet at a point called the origin, where the y-axis and x-axis meet. This point is called the origin. And it's very important to remember that the coordinate of the origin is given as 0, 0. So that's a very important part. So we need to add that coordinates describe the position of a point on the grid. That's also important part. Then we should also know that the coordinates, the form in which the coordinates are given. This is very important. Coordinates are given as x, y. And they must be separated by a comma and enclosed in a bracket. This is very important. So when I talk about the coordinate 2, 5, for example, you must separate 2 and 5 with a comma, and both the coordinates must be enclosed in a bracket. So that is correct. If you write it as 2, 5, that is wrong. Why is it wrong? Because they are not separated by a comma. So to make it correct, you have to insert the comma. Also, it is wrong to put it as 2, 5. That is wrong because it has not been enclosed in a bracket. So that is very, very important. That the coordinates, the x and y coordinates must be separated by a comma and enclosed in a bracket. So that part is very, very important. Coordinates are given as x, y enclosed in a bracket. So now we want to see how to read the coordinates from the Cartesian plane or how to plot them. For example, if we have this, and always make sure that you label your Cartesian plane at x-axis and y-axis. So it is also very important to note that the values to the right and up from the origin are always positive, and the values to the left and downwards from the origin are always negative. So for example, we can have that 1, 2, 3 positive numbers. So negative numbers placed, you must put the sign minus. This is very, very important. Otherwise, for positive, we can either put the positive sign or you can just write the number. But for negative numbers, you must insert the negative. So this is just an example. So for example, here now I have point P. You are asked to write the coordinate of the point P. The first thing, take your ruler, and note that the first coordinate should be read on the x-axis. So the order is very important. Draw your vertical line from P to the x-axis. So that is 3. Put comma, then horizontal line to the y-axis. 2. So the coordinate of P is given as 3, 2. So the most important thing, please start reading on the x-axis, then y-axis. And don't forget to put your comma and the bracket. So that is about reading the coordinates. When it comes to plotting, for example, you could be asked to plot the point maybe -2, 1. So you're supposed to plot this on the Cartesian plane in 2D. So we know that the first value is always the x coordinate. So on the x-axis, you have -2 here. Put your ruler and draw a vertical line. Then 1 is the y coordinate. So on the y-axis, where there's 1, draw horizontal line. So where the two lines meet, where the vertical and horizontal lines meet, gives you the point Q. So that's your point. As simple as that. So just remember what you're required to do in this case. So you can note this also. The values to the right and up from the origin are positive. When I talk of from the origin, the point 0, 0. So that part is very, very important. And the values to the left and down are negative. So that brings us to the end of the first objective, knowing how to plot and how to read the coordinates. So we're going to move to the next objective, that is finding the gradient of a straight line. So finding the gradient of a straight line, first of all, we need to know what gradient is when we talk about gradient of a line. So gradient is simply another word for slope. So the slope of a line is called its gradient. It is very important to note this. It is just another word for slope. The slope of a line is called its gradient. So that is very, very important. We can have the steeper lines, and we are saying the higher the gradient, the steeper the line. This is also very important to note. The higher the gradient, the steeper the line. So we're going to look at now how to find the gradient. And you should also know that for you to get the gradient of any line, you must have at least 2 points. So suppose I have that line. I have line segment A, B, and the coordinates of the point A is given as x subscript 1, y subscript 1, and B x subscript 2, y subscript 2. So always, to measure the gradient of a line, you simply need to draw a right angle triangle on that line. I think it's very important to note that. To measure the gradient of a line, you need to draw a right angle triangle. Just draw from the 2 points of the line. So we have point B. So we are drawing our right angle triangle. You know that a right angle triangle must have an angle of 90 degrees. So for you to calculate the gradient, you need to know the difference in the y coordinate. We call this the vertical distance. And vertical distance will be given by the change in the y coordinates. And that is y2, y subscript 2 minus y subscript 1. Then we have this, we call this horizontal distance. So horizontal distance will be given by the change in the x coordinates. So that is x subscript 2 minus x subscript 1. So it is very important to know now the formula of getting the gradient of any given line. It is always the change in the y-axis, that is the vertical distance, divided by the change in the x-axis, that is the horizontal distance. So that gives us the formula y subscript 2 minus y subscript 1 over x subscript 2 minus x subscript 1. So this formula is very important. Put it in a box. If you have highlighter, you can highlight it. You will use it. And I insist always when I ask to find the gradient given 2 points, you must write down the formula first. So let us look at these examples. So we'll call this example 1. The coordinates of point P are, for example, let's talk of 3, 4. and the coordinates of point Q are, let's talk of 8, 14. So we have 2 points. We want to find the gradient of the line joining the point P. So that's the question. Find the gradient of the line PQ. So that's our question. The coordinates of point P are 3, 4, and the coordinates of point Q are 8, 14. Find the gradient of the line PQ. So here I insist, always what you need to do first, don't forget please, label the first coordinate given as x subscript 1, y subscript 1, and the second coordinate x subscript 2 and y subscript 2. You have to do that. After that, write down the formula of getting the gradient. So the more you write the formula, the more you'll be able to remember. So after that now, just check the coordinates. Then you do your substitution. It will be very easy. If you don't label this, it is very possible that you misread the changes in the x or the y coordinates. So once you've labeled them appropriately as x subscript 1, y subscript 1, and x subscript 2, y subscript 2, and you have your formula written, now just check what is y subscript 2, 14, minus y subscript 1, 4, over x subscript 2, 8, and x subscript 1, 3. So you have 14 minus 4 is 10, 8 minus 3 is 5, and that gives you 2. That is your answer. As simple as that. So that will give you the gradient of the line PQ. That is our first example. Let us look at the second example. So I still repeat, when you are told to find the gradient of a line given 2 points, please, first of all, label the points appropriately and write down the formula of finding the gradient. So example 2, we have A5, 23, and let's say B, negative 2, 2, are 2 points. Find the gradient of the line AB. So just like I said before, the first thing is to label the coordinates given. The first coordinate and the second coordinate. I insist you have to label them. After that, write down the gradient, the formula of getting the gradient of a straight line. Then from here, just do your substitution. Just check. Y subscript 2 is given as 2 minus y subscript 1 is 23 over x subscript 2 is negative 2 minus x subscript 1 is 5. So this will give you 21 over negative 7. That gives you negative 3 as the gradient. It is very straightforward. So remember the formula and the labeling. So the last example on this, sometimes you can be given the problem in diagram form. It is very, very important. can draw that. So this is x-axis and this is y-axis, the origin. Then I told that this point is 6 and this point is 3. And the question is, find the gradient. So we call this line L. Find the gradient of line L. So just like I said before, for you to get the gradient of a line, you need to know at least 2 points. So this now brings us back how to read the coordinates. So we have these 2 points, we have this point, and we have this point. So you need to read the coordinates of this point correctly, and also this for you to be able to get your answer correct. So just like we said before, reading the coordinate, we start with the x, then y. So starting with this point, x is 0 and y is 6. So here the coordinate is 0, 6. And here x is 3 and y is 0. So we have 3, 0. So always remember that on the y-axis, the value of x is always 0. And on the x-axis, the value of y is always 0. So now we have our 2 points. So from there our 2 points are 0, 6 and 3, 0. Just like I said before, the first thing, label the points correctly. After that, write down the formula of getting gradient. That's the question. Find the gradient of the line L. So writing the formula will not even take you more than 10 seconds. And remember, I said the more you write it, the more you will remember. So from here now, we can get our y subscript 2, which is 0 minus 6 over 3 minus 0. That will give us minus 6 over 3, and that gives us negative 2. So that is the solution to that question. I hope everything is clear. So just remember the steps. So we are moving on to the next objective. This is how to find the equation of a line given 2 points. Then we are also going to see how to find equation of a line from given 2 points. So that's how you should be able to calculate the gradient. So before we move to that, we want to see how to find the gradient from an equation. So we have finding the gradient from an equation. So this is whereby you are not given the coordinates. So you need to know this. This is very, very important. The equation of a line, of a straight line. This is the general form of equation of a straight line. Is written as y equals to mx plus c. So this is a very, very important equation that you should always remember. It is general form of equation of a straight line, where m represents the gradient and c represents the y-intercept. When I talk of y-intercept, it is where the line crosses the y-axis. So you can also add this down, where m represents the gradient and c represents the y-intercept. So So it is the easiest to remember. So we're going to look at the following examples, how we use that equation to find the gradient of a line. So the question would be find the gradient of these lines. So the first line would be y equals to 4x plus 2. So that is equation of a line. So what you need to do, just compare this equation with the general form of equation. Our general form of equation is y equals to mx plus c. And we say that letter m represents the gradient. Or you can simply look for the number in front of x. We call it coefficient of x. So when you compare these two equations, you will see that 4 represents m. Therefore, your gradient equals to 4. As simple as that. So you just need to use your eyes. M is the coefficient of x. Coefficient of x means the number in front of x. And take note, you need to make y the subject of the formula first. You can see from the equation, we have 1y. So at times, for example, they can talk of 2y equals to 10x plus 5. So at this point, you are wrong to say that the gradient is 10. Because what you have here is 2y, but it should be 1y. So in this case, what you need to do, divide everything by coefficient of y. First, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. So that this 2 will cancel this. Now you have y equals to 5x plus 5 over 2. So from here, you'll be able to get your gradient as 5. So that's very, very important. So the second example, you can have y equals to negative 2/3 x minus 3. So there's still, just like we said, for you to get your gradient, just check the number in front of x. It can be a fraction, it can be a decimal. So in this case, if you compare this with the equation of a line mx plus c, you will see that m equals to negative 2 over 3. Therefore, your gradient is simply negative 2/3. As simple as that. So example C. So this now you need to be a little bit more careful. C, now you have y equals to 5 minus x. So you have to be more careful there now. Most students will rush to say that the gradient is 5. No. Please always consider the general form of equation. The gradient always given by m, the number in front of x. And take note here, please, negative x, the same as negative 1x. So in this case, upon you, just add 1 there, so that your gradient is now negative 1. So that is very, very important. So don't make that mistake. 5 is your c, the constant, when you compare this with the given equation. So we can also have y equals to maybe 2 minus 5x. In this case also, when I'm told to find the gradient, please don't rush for 2. You are allowed, you can rewrite this as y equals to negative 5x plus 2. You are allowed, so that you see your m clearly. But always going for the gradient, please check the number in front of x. So in this case, our gradient is negative 5. So now you know 2 methods on how to find the gradient. When you're given the coordinates, remember the formula. when you are given an equation, remember the general form of an equation. Hope that is very clear. So we are moving on to the next objective, that is finding the equation of a line given 2 points. So finding equation of a line given 2 points. So this is also very important to note, just like I said before, that the general form of equation of a straight line is given as y equals to mx plus c. So this is a very important formula when it comes to straight lines. So now we want to see how to find the equation of a line given 2 points. So another thing that you need to remember, please, for you to find the equation of a line, you must know the gradient of that line, because the equation is given in this form. Therefore, we need to know the value of m and the value of c. That is why it is very important to know how to find the gradient of any given line. Okay? So you can put this down. To find the equation of a line, you must first find the gradient. Okay, so to find the equation of a straight line, that's very important. We have to be specific. We have different types of lines. To find the equation of a straight line, you must first find the gradient, and you must also know at least 1 point. At least 1 point where the line passes through. Okay. So for this, take note for the last part, knowing at least 1 point, that in that case you will be given the gradient. So when you are given the gradient already, you don't need to know the 2 points. But when you're not given the gradient and you're told to find the equation, you will be given the 2 points. So we shall look at this example. The first example in this case. So let's call it example 1. So remember I said you have to have at least 2 points. So we have point A01 and let's say maybe point B 310. So A and B are 2 points. And our question is find the equation of line AB. That is the question. So when I'm told to find the equation of a straight line, what should ring into your mind is the form of the equation. What should ring into your mind is this equation, y equals to mx plus c. So once you know this, you'll be able to know that you need to have m, and you also need to have c, where m is a gradient and c is a y-intercept. So means the first thing that we need to do is to find the gradient. Just like we said before, label the points. That's the first thing. X subscript 1, y subscript 1, x subscript 2, and y subscript 2. And write down the formula of getting the gradient. I insist. before you do any substitution, write this formula. It will not take you more than 10 seconds. So from that now, we have that 10 minus 1 over 3 minus 0. So that is 9 over 3, which gives us 3. So now we have the gradient 3. So gradient is m, is our m. So from the equation here now, we've already known the value of m to be 3. So where there's m, substitute it with 3. So from this equation now, you'll have y equals to 3x plus c. So the next task is to how to find the value of c, where the line crosses the y-axis. Remember, sometimes they'll give you the diagram where you will be able to see where the line crosses y-intercept. But in this case, when you're given the 2 points, it's upon you to find the value of c. And this is how you will get the value of c. Take any of the 2 points given. But I would advise you to take the point with the 0 coordinate, because it's easier to work with the 0. When you multiply any number by 0, it gives you 0. So let's take the point A, 0, 1. So the point A, 0, 1, so 0 is x and 1 is y. So we are going to substitute these values in this our equation for us to make c the subject of the formula. So where there's y, you'll put 1. And where there's x, you'll put 0. Remember, 3x simply means 3 times x. So where there's x, you put 0 bracket plus c. So this will give us 1. 3 times 0 is just 0 plus c. So from here, you will be able to see that the value of c is 1. So after that, in our final answer, you need to substitute c with 1. So our answer now will be y equals to 3x plus 1. So this is the equation of that line, AB, line segment, that is. So let's look at the next example. So the next example, you can be given the problem in diagram form. So that is x-axis, that is y-axis, that is 0, this is 1, and that is 3. So the question is, find, let's call this line L, find the equation of line L. So just like we said before, for you to find equation of a line, you need to first of all get the gradient of that line. So still it brings us back how to read the coordinates correctly. So we have the line L, it cuts y-axis at point 3 and at point 1. So we need to know these 2 coordinates for us to find the gradient. And what you should always remember is how the formula of a straight line looks like. So we need to find m, which is the gradient, and to find c. In this case now it is very simple. For you to find c, c is the y-intercept. Just look at where your line crosses the y-axis. You'll get your answer there. So first thing, read the coordinates correctly. The 2 coordinates, we have the first point, this point. Remember I said on the x-axis the value of y is 0. So the first coordinate will be 1, 0. And the second coordinate, I said that on the y-axis x is 0. So the second coordinate is 0, 3. So we are going to look to find the gradient. Just like I said before, please label the coordinates correctly. After that, write down the formula of the gradient. I still insist on this. So once you have the formula and the coordinates labeled, just do your substitution. So this will give us 3 minus 0 over 0 minus 1. So this will give us 3 over minus 1, which is negative 3. So that is our gradient. The gradient of the line is negative 3. So now please remember, we need to substitute that in our general form of equation. So where there's m here, you're going to put negative 3. So that we have y equals to negative 3x plus c. So now we need to find the value of c. And I said, please, now you don't need to take any of the 2 points. C is where the line crosses the y-axis. So the line L crosses the y-axis at point 3. So our C is 3. So our answer now will be y equals to negative 3x plus 3. So that's the equation of that line. I think that is very clear. So you should be able to find the equation of a line given 2 points correctly without any problem. So just remember the steps. So moving on, we are going to look at the gradients of parallel lines. I will give you an exercise by the end of this lesson for you to at least try at your own time. So gradient of parallel lines is very important. When you talk about parallel lines, you need to know what parallel lines are. These are lines which do not meet because the distance between them is always the same. And we always represent them by an arrow. So when I talk of parallel lines, those are the lines I'm talking about. They will never meet. The reason being the distance between them is always equal. So it's very important to note that parallel lines have the same gradient. Underline that word same. So this is a very important part of it. Parallel lines have the same gradient. So at times you'll be given maybe equation of a line, then you're told to find the equation of another line which is parallel to the given line. So the property, the first important thing that you need to remember is that parallel lines have the same gradient. We shall look at this example. Find the equation of a line parallel to y equals to 4x minus 1 and passes through the origin. So that's the question. So the question reads, find the equation of a line parallel to the line y equals to 4x minus 1 and passes through the origin. So first of all, the given equation is y equals to 4x minus 1. From here, we should be able to know the gradient of this line. That means from here, our m is 4. So this line has gradient 4. So we're told to find the equation of a line parallel to this. So means this other line also must have gradient of 4. So from our general form, y equals to mx plus c. For the other equation, we know that it also has an m, which is 4. So you have y equals to 4x plus c. So here now we need to find the value of c. You've been told that this line passes through the origin. So remember at the beginning, we mentioned that the origin is where the x-axis and y-axis meet. And we also did mention the coordinate of the origin, which is always 0, 0. So you need to know that. So any line passes through the origin, that line crosses y-axis at 0. So that means our C is simply 0. So our answer will be 4x plus 0. So basically this is just testing your knowledge. What do you know about the gradient of parallel lines? They are always the same. Always remember that. So we shall move on to the gradient of perpendicular lines. So also here, we need to know what are perpendicular lines. Just like we say that parallel lines, they are lines which do not meet. The distance between them is always the same. So when we talk about perpendicular lines, these are two lines which meet at right angles. Means they meet at 90 degrees. It's very important to put this down. Perpendicular lines are lines that meet or intersect at right angles. So when you talk about right angles, we talk about 90 degrees. So these are the lines that we are talking about. If we have line 1 and line 2, they meet at 90 degrees. So that is very, very important. When we talk about perpendicular lines, they are lines which meet at 90 degrees. So from here now, we want to see also what do we know about their gradients. So when we have these two lines which are perpendicular, we have line 1 and line 2. So what you should always know about the gradient of two perpendicular lines, their product is always -1. For example, in this case, M1 represents the gradient of line 1 and M2 represents the gradient of line 2. So when you multiply these gradients, it should always give you -1. So this is very, very important concept. So we have M1 times M2 is -1. Put this in a box or highlight it. Very, very important. And most students do confuse the relationship between the gradients of parallel lines and perpendicular lines because they don't get the difference. So that's very, very important. I think you need to put this down. The gradients the product, I think you can put it this way. The product, so when I talk about product, I talk about multiplication, and underline that. The product of their gradients is always -1. So that when I talk about product, that means when you multiply their gradient, you should always get -1. So remember that. So at times, you'll be given, you'll understand better after looking at this example. So D 8, 5 and E -4, 1. So these are 2 points. So D and E are 2 points. So the first question, is find the gradient of line DE. Then the second question now, find the gradient of the perpendicular line. Okay, so the first one, find the gradient of that line DE. The second one, find the gradient of the line perpendicular to the line DE. So we have 2 steps. The first step, that is A, we are told to find the gradient of the line DE. Just like I said before, label the points correctly. Then after that, write down the formula of getting the gradient, I insist. So y subscript 2 is 1. So there we have 1 minus 5 over minus 4 minus 8. So that is minus 4 over minus 12. So this gives us the gradient as 1 over 3. So that's the gradient of the line DE. So the second part now, we are told to find the gradient of the line perpendicular to DE. Means we are talking about the gradient that meets the line DE at 90 degrees. So if we have this as our DE, the line that is perpendicular to line DE is any line that meets DE at 90 degrees. So here now it is upon you to remember that the product of the gradients should always be -1. So you need to write that down first. So for part B, so you need to write that M1 times M2 equals to -1. That's the first thing. Where in this case now, M subscript 1 represents the gradient of the line DE, which you already have as 1 over 3. So where there's M1, you'll put 1 over 3. So in this case now, for us to get the gradient of the other line, we need to make M subscript 2 the subject of the formula. That means we need to divide both sides by 1 over 3. Divide by 1 over 3. Divide by 1 over 3. And that will give you this as -3. So the gradient of perpendicular line to DE is -3. You can make a quick check. When you multiply these two, it should always give you -1. So you can quickly multiply 1 over 3 times -3. What do you get? -1. If you don't get -1, that means there's something wrong. So you need to go back to your work and check where you've made a mistake. So far, that's fine. We've talked about now gradients of parallel lines, gradients of perpendicular lines. So we are going to move on to see how to find the midpoint of a given line segment. I think that's our second last objective, if you can still remember. Finding the midpoint of a straight line. So to find the midpoint of a straight line, you need to know the coordinates of the endpoints. You need to know the coordinates of the endpoints of that line segment. And we have the formula for that. Now suppose you have a line the line P, Q. The coordinates of Q is given as subscript 2, and P, X subscript 1, Y subscript 1. So when I talk of the coordinates of the endpoints, this is what I'm talking about of any given line segment. So the midpoint is simply the point that is in between the two given points. And this is the formula. Always remember this. The midpoint is given by x1, x subscript 1 plus x subscript 2 divided by 2, comma, because they are coordinates, y subscript 1 plus y subscript 2 over 2, and then closer. So this is a formula, please highlight it or put it in a box. Always remember this formula. Always remember that formula. So for example, now you are told to, I'll give you one example. We have A814 and B -4, -4 are 2 points. So the question is, find the midpoint of the line AB. So here also, please, I insist, from the formula that we have, you need to label your coordinates, as always. Then again, I also insist you need to write down that formula so that you don't confuse the coordinates. So the formula of the midpoint, remember I told you writing this formula will not take you a century. So once you have the formula, you simply now substitute the values. X subscript 1 is 8 plus -4 divided by 2. Remember, we are getting the average, comma, 14 plus -4 over 2, close the brackets. So just note that plus and positive times negative is negative. So this simply means 8 minus 4, which is 4 divided by 2, will give you 2. You can use your calculator. 14 plus -4 simply means 14 minus 4 gives us 10, divided by 2 is 5. So that's the coordinate of the midpoint, as simple as that. So what you need to do, please, we are running out of time. So just remember our objectives. Now you should be able to read the coordinates, plot the coordinates. Should be able to find the gradient of a line given 2 points or given an equation. You should be able to interpret and obtain an equation of a straight line in form of y equals to mx plus c. You should be able to find the gradient of parallel lines and perpendicular lines, and you should also be able to find the coordinates of the midpoint. So I would give you a small exercise. And try to do this exercise. So the equation of a line is given as 2y equals to 3x plus 4. You are told to find the gradient of that line. Part B, find the coordinates of the point where this line crosses the y-axis. Number 2, so number 2, find the gradients of this line. So A, y equals to 4x plus 3, B, y equals to 1 minus x. And lastly, number 3, so A, find the gradient, call it line L. B, find the equation of line L. And lastly, find the midpoint of the line L. I think those are enough exercise for you. So that will bring us to the end of our topic of today. I wish you well. Stay safe. Thank you.